Welcome back to Know to Grow, a light to heavy duty podcast. I have Kryz Molyneaux on with KTS Diesel out of Arizona. Excited to talk about all things acquisitions, multi-location strategy, and business ownership realities today. Let's hop into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Kryz, and what KTS Diesel does.
Well, thanks for having me, buddy. I appreciate being on your show here. So KTS Diesel, we have a few locations here in Phoenix. We've been in business since 2009. Multiple mobile service trucks and 2 shop locations. We basically keep your fleet on the street like 1 p.m. at a time. We're the go-to 24/7 for our customers that get established. So it broke down side of the road, no starts at your location, all the way up to heavy line repairs in the shops.
Excellent. And, have you always been in the business? How did you get into it?
Yeah, I'm second generation diesel mechanic. So I grew up around my dad wrenching, and my partner, Tony, he's the same. He's a third generation diesel mechanic. So it's in our blood. We grew up around it. I started working with my dad, and he had his own mobile diesel repair business growing up. And I was a little grease monkey. I'd climb around and just basically grease all the stuff he was servicing, help him clean engine parts, like just the little stuff. So I've been doing it since I was about 8.
Okay, excellent, good. Let's drop into multi-location strategy here first. We'll talk about kind of owning multiple locations, managing them, and starting multiple locations. We can kind of leave it open-ended, so I'll let you take it off.
Yeah, so everyone kind of really wants like multiple locations until it comes down to really realizing what it takes to run them, because it really comes down to leadership, because you can have like the best employees in the world like running the location, but they're gonna skip things here and there without like the checks and balances in place. You really need to have everything in line, and we've been rocking 2 locations for I think 15 years now. And we had a third location for a couple of years here, but we actually ended up shutting that one down because it was just too much to maintain. So yeah, I mean, if you think about like how a shop runs, if you're in the mobile diesel repair facility and you have like multiple service trucks, you know what it takes to like get another truck on the road. Yeah. Well, like scale that times like 10, because you need all the things at the other location. It's like there's a lot of overhead that goes into it. Just the AC machine alone, those things cost a grip. You got to have the space, you got to have the electricity, the staff. So is like here in Phoenix, we're lucky because we're different sides of the city here. We got one in Chandler, one in Phoenix, and we had one in Avondale. But it's like a lot of people, they like the convenience of having a shop close, but also we're mobile. So we take the shop to them. The shop's just for like heavy line repairs usually. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of everyone's just like have another location and you'll double your profits. And reality is like, it just have another location and be more stressed out, and your margins go to shit basically until you get it rocking and rolling. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's challenging. I mean, tell the listeners how, and we'll kind of jump into some of the reasons, but how far apart are the locations in Chandler and Phoenix?
Roughly about 20 miles apart, 25 miles apart, somewhere in there. And then we have a broader network that way because we do like a 30-mile radius from each shop. So we have this like giant radius that we can service with having 2 locations like that. Because we're centralized, we don't do all of Arizona. So yeah, it's really nice because like, hey, Chandler guys, like you guys got the east side stuff, we got the west side stuff, and we kind of play it by ear when we're on call and things like that. So
yeah. So you're saying 30 miles for the mobile, or just your inbound customers coming into the shop?
No, mobile. So yeah, we have a 30-mile radius per shop is kind of how we go out. Anything past that, we tow the damn thing.
And how many bays do you have at each shop?
We got 6 in Phoenix and we got 3 in Chandler.
Yeah. So, I think when we talk about, multi-shop location strategy, obviously that can, 1.5 times or double your revenue, or 2.5 times that, right? Depending on several things. And then you have the opportunity to spread overhead across multi-locations. So, maybe you have the same accountant, right, managing a different client base. You don't need two accountants per location. You have a technology system like Full Bay, and the cost per shop decreases when you add another shop, right? Drops by 50%. So there's some things you can do with overhead that can make the economics, and essentially your EBITDA, which is your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, which is really a metric for cash flow, go up. In practice, obviously, you can't be at two locations at once. So you have to have, good leadership, a good GM, basically middle management between you and the folks doing the repairs in place. What are some of the challenges that you've had there and actually getting gross profitability up per location?
Name of the game is run lean, man. I mean,
Yeah.
if you get a good employee that can wear multiple hats, you grab onto them and you run with them. You grow it with them. And those are the people that keep it alive. Because like you're saying, it's exactly that. Like HR, phones, like any type of scheduling, anything that you can do remote, you just do from one location.
Yeah.
Boots on the ground, that's where you got to staff up. But yeah, it's challenging for sure. But you got to have your checks and balances, like you got to have your audits, your shop audits, your truck audits, your customer audits. You got to do the good follow-ups behind all this stuff that happens.
KPIs too, right? Revenue per employee, just some things you need to have a good pulse on. I talk with a lot of folks like yourself. I've got folks in their 60s that are still hands-on. I've got folks that, can basically run the business from home, right? There's a little bit of additional costs associated with that. You're taking this podcast from your home today, but can you run the business from your home? Do you need to be in person? Tell us a little bit about how that impacts your economics.
I'm just a control freak, like most business owners, so like I like shaking hands and getting in it with the guys, getting my hands dirty. Like I like that because I've been in business 16 years, man, and like there's years where you're totally hands off and like revenue's good, but you're just not sleeping well. It's like you got to get back into the grind a little bit here and there to also see like what needs to be improved that's not getting on the checklist or the to-do list, for the first shop, for the trucks. That's and I'm young enough to get back in it at the minute, so that's what I like to do is just lead from the top and make sure these guys know that like, whatever they're going to do daily is like I've already done. So yeah, it's a fun camaraderie and the culture is awesome. Our turn is really low on customer relations, like everything, man. It's a good business to be in. And like I said, it's in my blood anyway. So I don't know what else I'd be doing, man.
Yeah. Remind the listeners how many employees you have.
We got about 10 employees right now. We were up to like 15, but honestly, we like every 5 years or so, I like to make sure we're hitting all our net. And sometimes that comes with, we're looking for A players and staffing up with A players. It's tough because it takes a little bit to get them up to where they need to be. And then when they're there, we're golden. But when we get the economic downturns, we got to lean out sometimes. And, that's the name of the game too, is, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty again, because, you can't be up on this high horse. Like, hey, I'm making all this money a year. I got all this stuff in place. I'm good. You know what I mean? But reality is like, you still got to lead, and to do that, you got to get in it with them.
Yeah. And I think, that, getting your hands dirty sometimes is good. You kind of, build some of that camaraderie with your employees, show them that you're invested and reachable and kind of obtainable. You really kind of understand, where they're lacking on the floor, where their skill sets are good, but you also don't want to get, too involved. And I think balancing that control can be very challenging. And that's typically, seen and even startups outside of heavy duty. It could be anything, or it could be a founder owner who is, heavily involved in sales to make their business take off and cover some of their cash flow needs, but entrusting in some of their employees to help grow that. How do you find, and nobody's perfect at it, but how do you try to find that balancing act from really being the CEO versus kind of getting some of your hands dirty?
It's a good question. I think that's the question, man. It all shifts. Like,
Yeah.
16 years, like we've seen a lot of cycles throughout the years of like how things rock. But honestly, you just got to trust your people and communication, man. That's like one of our core values is communication. And, if someone sends a message, we're all over, like copy 10-4, I'm on it. There's nothing like left out in the open. That's how we communicate with customers as well. So like the communication's always there. Without that, man, things do fall apart. There's so many questions, open-ended questions like, did you receive it? Are they on that? So like we work through all that stuff. And if you got a problem, you got to say something. We can't fix something that we don't know is broken.
Yeah, I got you. And then you mentioned the concept of double overhead. I want to talk about that because really, the goal is to not double the overhead. It's to spread the overhead cost out across 2 or 3 locations versus one. What have been the challenges that you've seen with overhead by going to another location? Obviously, you have labor, right, which is kind of a 1-to-1 ratio. There's nothing you can do about that. But some of these other things that should, get spread across multi-locations, like one accountant or whatever that is. Talk about that.
Well, I mean, it's kind of just like you would throw on another service truck. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that comes along with it. You got insurance, staffing, you got to build the trucks. You got two compressors per, like the initial is a lot, but then throughout the years, like you also obviously recoup and you're good. But getting past that recoup, a lot of people I think that I've seen, they throw in the towel. They're just like, I'm going to shut it down. I mean, we had to as well because it just wasn't making sense. You lose one, like say you establish you got all these customers around you, or you have like one big one, and then they go under, and then you're like, oh crap, like what am I gonna do now? Like hit the streets, marketing goes up, but like to try to stay ahead of like corporate buyouts, man, they happen all the time, dude. And like within the last 5 to 10 years, like they've been pretty dramatic in this industry.
Yeah. So are they, obviously when some of these acquisitions take place for your customer base, they'll try to centralize the parts and repair providers, negotiate pricing. I'm sure there's some big parts and repair providers in the area. Are you losing customers because of this? Or are you having to adjust your pricing? How is that working out in the Phoenix Chandler area?
Typically how it rolls, dude, is like we will lose them for a stint, but if they keep if they get bought out by the right person, they keep the staff, and the staff is who we build relationships with throughout the years. So like we usually get them back. So it's like they'll be gone for maybe 6 months or a year, and they always usually come back if they have the same people in those seats. If not, then it goes to corporate, and corporate has nationwide accounts, right? So they get fleet pricing, or they get the best deal on whatever parts or trucks that they need. So yeah, it's tough. We don't have to adjust pricing. Like no one's really looking for price. Everyone's looking for now or yesterday. You know what I mean? Yeah. So and that's what we offer. We offer right now. Our turnaround times is within 48 hours in the shop, and obviously mobile same day. So yeah, it's more like getting a hold of the right person again to get back in the door. Because when you get a corporate buyout, it's like, well, I don't know who to contact over there. Start with like this person way down here, and then like it takes time to get to the right person to get back in the door sometimes too.
Yeah, that's helpful. Makes sense there. Let's jump into acquisitions and managing 2 versus 3 locations. You've tried to make an acquisition before yourself. which is hard. I mean, if you've never done it, you're learning on the fly, and it certainly takes time away from doing your day job. Tell the audience about the acquisition that you tried to make, when you tried to make it, and kind of why it didn't work, and then we can kind of discuss, have some back and forth conversation here.
Sure. We did purchase another location. It was about probably 2021, I would say.
Yep.
It was a customer of mine who had his own fleet repair as well. And then we kind of get his overflow that his techs couldn't handle. And then I've known this guy for over 10 years, and he's wanted to sell. And he's like, hey man, I know you'll do good here. My techs love you. Let's make this happen. And, I looked at everything. He had good assets. He had great accounts and his own account. And then I was just like, sure, man, let's make this happen. We purchased it. And unfortunately, not all the T's were crossed. And we ended up basically having to staff that whole other location, which was hard as hell. And eventually we tried to absorb it, but we just had to offload it. So we had to offload assets to try to recoup.
Yeah. So, obviously the execution of an acquisition, it's hard, right? There's, you can look at the financials of a company, but until you do a deep dive and figure out what's going on from a qualitative and non-quantitative or quantitative position, you really don't understand the company until you take over the operation. The transition period is very difficult. As most people know, a lot of acquisitions fail. A lot of them fail. We try to have our business owners know that when an acquisition takes place in a full buyout, they need to be prepared to stay on at least 12 months. Very important to making sure that continuity stays the same. The employees can ease into new ownership, new cultures, new styles. There's also going to be, sometimes a technology or a back-end component, like overhead, for example, that needs to get implemented at the second location. And that's always a challenge there. For smaller business owners, they don't need or can afford, quite frankly, an investment banker to go and make a $500,000 or $1 million acquisition because of the fee structure. But one thing that they should be aware of that we do sometimes, and most advisors will offer, is what you call a negotiated sale, where you can come in for an owner, look at several things such as the offer and deal structure, the legal terms, the tax liabilities, and so forth, to help with that acquisition and smooth out some of the things on the front end. So I do want our audience to be aware that is a solution for one-off or smaller deals. You talk about some of the things that happened here, right? I know. Well, let's talk about how long did the owner stay with the business, or did he kind of cold turkey day one and leave?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it was. He's older. He wanted out. And what really backfired is one of the employees wanted to buy it from him. But obviously, it's like a lot of people, like acquisitions, right? Like 79% of them fell, right? For different reasons. But, we try to offload that business as well. And yeah, everyone's like kicking tires. Oh, I want this so bad. I want this business. I could kill it. And then you're like, hey, show me the money. They're like, oh, well, There's the problem right there. Yeah. And then like owner financing, like that's always an option too. But problem with people nowadays is like everyone's dreaming big and has big wishes, but no collateral to back anything up.
A broker will charge a little bit higher because the transaction is smaller. An investment banker like me will not. Our fees are not that high. They would never hit double digits. Yeah. And going back to the whole management buyout idea, that's theoretically it's nice. You can pass your business on to your team, have them invested for the long-term future. You trust the business is in good hands, but it does come down to capital from the management team, who in most cases makes less than the ownership and can't necessarily afford it. Seller financing or seller note is something that we see in almost all of our sell side transactions. It just makes the deal more palatable for the buyer. A lot of times we'll see 20-ish% seller financing with right now interest rates are competitive kind of at the 8% range. And the seller can enter into a, 2, 3, 4 year seller financing and earning a good interest rate. Nothing is guaranteed, but a seller financing is much more guaranteed than an earnout per se.
Totally.
Yeah. So appreciate you being candid on that. We hear this a lot where, it's just very, very difficult to expand the operation to a second or third location. And for many owners, it's not worth the downside risk. So we get that. And kudos to you for attempting that. But hey, you're still running 2 locations, 25, 30 miles apart, which is difficult. You've started in the field as a mechanic, right? And now you're owning a business with 10 employees. Any myths you want to dispel on easy profitability and kind of what to look for, so founder owners can understand and be aware of some of the challenges here?
How's the saying go, man? It's like, expansion fuels the ego and profits drive the business, but like cash flow is actually what keeps the doors open, and running lean. The biggest thing I can say is like, you got to lean out. You have to, do less with more. If you're in the stages of trying to sell eventually, you got to start early, and cut as much as you can. And that, who cares about top line? Like, yeah, it looks nice, but that's your ego, right? It's like, oh, cool, I'm making like, $5 million a year. Awesome. What's your net though? If you're netting 2%, who cares? Like, you got to get the net all the way up to where it looks attractive to someone to buy. And there's always, build it to sell it.
There are things that, an owner, if they are looking to exit, right, they need to be prepared 2 to 3 years in advance to start making the business more attractive. The difference between an exit, if you're doing 10% EBITDA versus 15% EBITDA, is monumental in terms of valuation. In this heavy duty space, if you're doing 10% EBITDA, 1 or 2 locations, expect to receive, 3 times multiple. Now, if you're doing a 15% EBITDA margin, 16, 17, 18, that's when you're getting into the 5 times multiple. It's not just about growing revenue. It's about really managing expenses and using those KPIs to improve your business, getting a hold on, revenue per employee, employee efficiency, those types of things, making sure you're getting the best prices available from your suppliers, managing your inventory correctly. And then if you have mobile assets, making sure you're taking care of those vehicles too, and then not creating a cost center for yourself. Other things like negotiating, if you lease the space, negotiating the lease terms with the lessor. That's very important. We can go into that, in another conversation. There's a lot of literature on this, but there's things that can certainly be buttoned up, as you know. So, anything else, Kryz, you want to talk about?
Not really, man. I mean, KTS is here for everyone. We're not just here to like fix trucks. I'm here to like help people out as well. And that's how we are across the board, man. I'm looking to help little guys out that, I wish I had when I started to guide me along. But it's hard. And that's why I'm saying good for this podcast and what you're doing, man, because there's not a lot in this industry that touches on the ownership side.
And the idea behind this podcast is like a take a penny, leave a penny thing. It's by owners for owners. And that's what we're trying to do here. So Kryz, appreciate the time this morning, and I'll give you some of your day back.